welcome to Lee Clark and his very famous son now.
Starting to go quiet as Lee Clark, but now I'm being resurrected as Bobby Clark's dad. So I leans across. All right, big man. Tried to give him a friendly handshake. He didn't even look at us. And when I called him, I was like, what's happening? He said, Dad, Jurgen's leaving. And it was like, I was like gutted. Imagine what the players were like. I was gutted. For me, the manager has to stay. He has to give another opportunity in the summer window too.
You were a big Dunks landlord.
I was.
He did put a pigeon off to the back.
I'm just going to tell you. Unbelievable, that.
Hey, it's time for another No Tippy Tappy Football, brought to you by William Hill. How's your week been, Sam?
Very good, actually. I think that having come back from Dubai, it took a while to settle in, but obviously watching the football as usual and watching the drama it causes, and this stage of the season, as it gets ever closer to the end of the season, more and more drama, not just with the players, but also with the officials again, and what people are saying and what the referees are doing. And yeah, it's very, very interesting indeed when you're a neutral now. But obviously the big game was the Liverpool Man City game. I thought, as a spectacle, I sat down and really enjoyed it from start to finish, So sometimes that's not always the case. Sometimes it can be, because you're not sitting at home on the telly, it can get a bit tedious sometimes. So, a fantastic game, that one.
Oh, we'll get on to that, I'm sure. And I've got to say, your tan's still looking lovely, Sam. Your Dubai tan.
It's called moisturiser.
Yes. Are you using one with a bit of tan in it?
No. Don't go that far, Natalie. Having me moisturiser first, like, I mean.
I was thinking Phil Brown's been like passing you some tips or something.
Brownie turns brown if he has 2 minutes in the sun and don't need any sun factor on, like, I mean. So he used to be nicknamed Sunbed Brown, you know that.
Did he?
Yeah.
I can imagine, yeah.
Came out,
Yeah, I can imagine that. It's not a surprise. Well, lovely to see you as always. And I know we're going to have a good one today, so please could you introduce your guest?
Absolutely. A long time we've known each other, a fantastic career as a player and not quite as good as the manager, but very, very good. And he can obviously tell us about the ups and downs are there, because at one stage he was looking like he was going to the very, very top. That didn't quite happen, but that, of course, is other people's hands. Sometimes we get dealt something in the game we don't deserve, and sometimes it can have a bit more of an effect. But as a manager, I always thought he was going to be that. In the short time that I knew him, really wanted him to be with me a lot longer in our Newcastle days, as I only just got there, but obviously the attraction was much greater. So welcome to Lee Clark and his very famous son now, which we can talk about, So fantastic to see, that your son, my son tried desperately hard to become a professional footballer and desperately disappointed, quite right, but it's lovely to see his son following on from where Lee is. So Lee, thank you very, very much.
Great,
and his nickname is Nash. And I'm going to ask him why.
Nash.
Yeah, and I don't know why it is, but his nickname is Nash. So let's start with why Nash.
Right, I'll answer that one. Gaffer, I still call you Gaffer, because he was
Many
my gaffer.
do, come on, yes.
Yes, a lot of respect for my old managers, so always seem to address them as that. Nash is it's a Geordie saying for doing something quickly. So when I was in Newcastle and Terry McDermott was the assistant, and we were waiting to go on a away trip, and I says, can you hold the bus back 5 or 10 minutes? I've got a Nash home to pick something up. I forgot it. And he's like, Nash, what does that mean? And then he just gave us the name, and it stuck to us. So, but the other name you've introduced us by, Lee Clark, you're one of the few people who call us that now, because I'm now known as Bobby Clark's dad.
How does that
I'm not
feel?
known as Lee Clark anymore, even back home in Newcastle. Oh, there's Bobby Clark's dad.
Does that make you proud?
Absolutely. I've got no ego with my name. If it's going to open a few doors again for us as Bobby Clark's dad, I'll take that.
I got something wrong then. His name. I thought, wow, what's going on? Yeah.
But everywhere I go. So I got introduced to the gig on Friday night with some of my ex-Newcastle teammates, and they all got known as their names, but I got introduced as Bobby Clark's dad, and that got the biggest cheer.
Do you know what? Usually the first question is, how do you know each other? But Lee, let's just go out and ask it straight away. How many times has your phone gone? Because we had Chris Coleman on last week, who's a good friend of yours. He said that as soon as Bobby won the cup, he messaged you. How many messages did you get saying something along the lines of, your son's already got more trophies than you?
Absolutely. The phone just went crazy. Text messages, emails, people leaving voicemails. It was as if I'd achieved it. You know, I was in the stands, and it was just amazing. And then everyone coming up there. I mean, after the game, I was staying in the hotel next to Wembley, and when I went back to the bar after the match, it was full of Liverpool fans, and I didn't have to put my hand in my pocket once. So that was a nice bonus. There's lots of bonuses coming from being his dad, that's for sure. So it's opening a few more doors for us. I was starting to go quiet as Lee Clark, but now I'm being resurrected as Bobby Clark's dad.
Hey, Alfie Haaland's doing all right as
Absolutely,
Erling's
yeah,
dad. So,
absolutely.
Yes. Well, we'll get more into Bobby and more into Liverpool shortly. But can we start off, as we usually do? How do you know each other? Just remind us all, we already know the Newcastle link, but how do you know each other? How far back can you go?
Oh, gosh.
Well, I first met Sam when I was at Sunderland, playing under his big mate, Peter Reid, who I had 2 brilliant years, but that was always a tough one for me, being a black and white through and through Newcastle fan. But, you know, when I was decided to leave Newcastle, I went and spoke to 7 or 8 different clubs. And Reedy was the last one. And I remember going into the meeting. He was cute, actually. We didn't meet at the training ground or ground. He took us into a wine and champagne bar in Manchester. And I said to him, I've only come to meet you out of courtesy, because I've heard a lot about you and I like you. You know, there's no chance I'm signing for you.
Because it's Sunderland.
Aye.
Yeah.
And about 4 or 5 bottles of champagne later, I've signed a 5-year contract. I was that worse for wear under the champagne. Sunderland and my agent at the time had organised a private jet back from Manchester to Newcastle just for me, and I'd had that one too many. They weren't going to actually let us back on the flight, and I had to explain I was the only one on the flight. It was actually for me.
Did you get a good deal, by the way, if you had 4 or 5 bottles of champagne?
I did get a very good deal, but I'll tell you what else happened on that weekend. So we shook hands on the deal on the Friday, and we're going to do the media conference on the Monday, because obviously it was big news. I was Sunderland's record signing. I was going from Newcastle United to Sunderland. I was a well-known Newcastle fan, so I stood on the terraces and always had my allegiances to Newcastle. So it was a big deal. So on the Monday, I was having the press conference. I went to play golf with some of my friends over the weekend back in the northeast, and
Did they refuse to play with you?
Well, actually, they nearly did. They nearly did. I'll tell you a story about that. And we playing golf, and I gets a phone call, and it was Glenn Hoddle to say he was naming his squad for Le Tournoi on the Monday, the competition that they played in the mini tournament before the World Cup in '98. And he said he's putting us in the squad the first time I'd been given a senior call-up. So as I'm golfing, I'm like thinking about things. So this was going to get announced on the Monday as well. So I rings my agent up and I said, have you got anything in the contract regarding international call-ups, caps? Because in the meeting when Reedy was trying to convince us to sign, he says, I'll get you in the England squad. And I thought, well, when I got that call, even before it had been announced, I thought, this guy's a magician. He's got us in the squad and I haven't even signed the contract. Yeah. So I rings my agents and he said, well, we've got bits and pieces in, why'd you ask? And I told him the story. Glenn Hoddle's been on, I'm getting called up. He's announcing it on Monday. So he called Bob Murray, the chairman, and got a few more definite inclusions in the contract. So
Thanks,
which
Glenn.
helped me, yeah. So what Glenn had, I told him what was happening. He allowed me to do the media conference with Sunderland, and then they would fly me out separately because the rest of the squad was leaving on the morning. So we done the media conference. I remember I went in with a suit. It was a bit of a pinstripe suit, and it did look black and white, I've got to say. And really straight away, he says, can you not just wear something that hasn't got black and white in it? And this was for the press conference. And then we done that, and I was sitting in his office. It was at Roker Park, but I never actually played at Roker Park because the Stadium of Light was being built. It was just still finishing. So I was sitting in his office, me, my dad, Reedy and Bob Murray. Come across the yellow ticker, Sunderland break the transfer record, sign Newcastle's Lee Clark, blah, blah, blah. And then we're sitting having a cup of tea and whatever. And then about 10 minutes later, another breaking news, in the yellow ticker came across Sunderland's new signing, Lee Clark, as the shock inclusion in Glenn Hoddle's Latorme War squad. So Bob Murray looks at Peter as if to say, he's done with a kipper with his contract. And I won't repeat what Peter said to us. There was a few expletives in there. So that was... But, in terms of the club, in terms of the manager, I loved playing for him. I had 2 great years. We were successful. And he was a great guy. I still keep in touch with him. But, after 2 years, we went our separate ways.
What a day. What a day you had that Monday, eh?
Day and a half, that one.
Wow. Also, I reckon you two get on really, really well because I can see you're both dead chatty and you both go off on a dead long tangent round.
Yes,
so I imagine you're very good friends, you two.
Well, like I said, I mean, we're not been that close, but we, on the times that we met and when we met, particularly when I went to Newcastle, like I said, I mean, it was in because Lee knew everything about Newcastle I needed to know, along with Terry Mack, which I kept, which I wasn't going to say off you go and bring my own men in. I was wanting the knowledge, like you mean, because they were in a pretty bad state at the time. So it was going to take some real sorting out, like you mean. And I'd been chased by Freddie Shepherd for 3 years, from Bolton. So finally, we sorted it out. And 2 months later, he's gone because Mike Ashley's took over. And unfortunately for me, that was the real problem in terms of the plans were laid down by me and Freddie by letting this many players go and bringing this many players in. And Freddie was desperate to, because he's a big Newcastle fan. Like,
huge. Massively.
Kenneth, his son, and the whole family, like, you mean, it's like, it's like, wow, and Sir John all behind them, the money to go with it was like sort of nothing I'd experienced before. So this was going to let me build a squad that was capable of what the Newcastle fans wanted. But unfortunately, and I don't blame Mike for that because he didn't know. I tried to explain the situation to him, but he was fine. He's coming into a football club. He's never run a football club before, and so in the end, we ended up signing the sort of players that were makeshift. Not the sort of look we were looking at Modric and people like that. You know what I mean? So they went out the window, and unfortunately, I fell foul to that by January 2008 because I was up and gone. After a great start, by the way, didn't
Absolutely.
we? Yeah, with a great start.
So what happened, the backstory to that was I went back to finish my career at Newcastle in 2005-2006 season, played 30 games in the Premier League for them. But then I knew it was ready to call it a day. I wanted to go into coaching and eventually management. And I got offered the opportunity to be the reserve team manager, now under 21 football, but reserve team manager with, having an input in what was happening with the first team. So, yeah, definitely took that job. It was great for me. And then as I said, Sam came in, and I remember sitting down with him. He came in the summer and, he explained what he wanted from his coaches, and he didn't interfere as long as you were giving them what he needed from his players. And so I thought, yeah, I'm going to enjoy this. But obviously I had that burning ambition in the back of my mind as well about becoming a manager. So, as I said, it was only about 4 or 5 months after working together. I got the offer to go to Norwich as assistant manager, and I thought that was the next step. And the reason I can always say this as well, because Sam had brought Steve round with him, who's a very, obviously, well-known coach and very good. We had Nigel Pearson,
yeah.
who was a really good coach and a good friend of mine, because Nigel had been the assistant before that, so we became close. And I just looked at it and thought, well, them are still young. I didn't know if Roundy wanted to become a manager, but I knew Nigel did eventually in his own right. So I thought even if the progression could be there, it might be longer than I wanted.
Yeah.
So I took the opportunity to become an assistant, which for my own personal stuff was good, because a year down the line at Norwich, I became a manager after that. But
who was that with at Norwich, sorry?
with Glenn, because Glenn had been
yeah.
The manager at Newcastle.
Yeah, Glenn Roder, that
Glenn
is.
Roder,
Yeah.
you know, God rest his soul. Because
Yeah.
me and Glenn went way, way back, because when Newcastle were trying to sign me as a kid, what they used to do in the school holidays when I was like 14, 15, I'd go and train with the first team in the mid like 80s and that. So, you know, and that was good in ways, but other ways I had the crazy horse Paul Gascoigne running around beside us. So we grew up with Paul. He's only a couple of years older than me. So there, that was the history to that. But when Sam come in, I really enjoyed his ways. He was one of the first managers to bring the analyst stuff, the data stuff. I liked that type of. I had been lucky enough to get a bit of that towards the end of my career with the French coach John Tigana, who followed a little bit of the Wenger way, and so I liked that. And he left us alone. He allow me to manage the reserve team in the way I wanted to, and he'd come to the games, but he wouldn't get involved, and that was good. And we'd talk about things, and so that's where we became close. He had a real affinity with his staff. He had brought a big staff, and inherited as well, because as he said, he kept the people that were there that he thought could help, and had a real good bond together as a group.
And then your managerial career, fascinating. I mean, we had your friend Chris Coleman on last week. He was telling us about China, and Sam was asking him how his Chinese was, and we were finding out about the culture. But I feel like you can top that, because you've managed in Sudan and Oman.
Yeah.
Wow, how did that come about? And can you just tell us what that was like?
Well, the Sudan one, the first time I went was through an agent I'd just been dealing with in the Birmingham area when I was Birmingham manager. And he just come to us and said, he was basically, would you fancy this? And I was like, looking it up, and I was like, oh, go on then, I'll have a go. This club in Africa, and they get 50,000 every week, and they play in the African Champions League. And the first time I went to that club, we did compete in the Champions League, and it was a great experience. 50,000 at home games. We played a club called Al-Ahly, who are the champions of Egypt, and basically win the African Champions League on a regular basis. They're the Real Madrid of Africa. We went to their ground in Cairo. There was 87,000 there. It was absolute madness.
Mental.
Crazy. And, we went into Congo, Tanzania, to things like this. So the experience was brilliant. I mean, there was no social life at all. You didn't go out in Sudan. Oman was completely different.
Quiet.
They had it was a place called Salalah, which was a coastal place. So they put me in a beautiful apartment right on the beachfront, and the infrastructure, our training ground and stadium was unbelievable. But we used to get a couple of hundred people to come and watch the games. There was no love of the football.
Two opposites.
So the life was fantastic. So and the standard of the football wasn't great. So after a while, my old club in Sudan came back and says, will you manage her again? We're in the Champions League. They'd got a Brazilian coach and they weren't too pleased with him. But this time, because of what was happening in Sudan and the country, we based ourselves in Egypt. We played our home games in Egypt, and I just lived in a hotel there in Cairo. So it was a brilliant experience. I mean, I never ever thought I'd end up in Sudan. I've got to say, a lad from the East End of Newcastle.
What did they make of your accent?
Well, thankfully, the fitness coach...
You had an interpreter.
Yeah, I did. And thankfully, he was a sports scientist, one of the best, and fitness coach. Actually, he's that good. Last summer, I paid for him to come to England and do some one-on-one work with Bobby before he went into pre-season.
Wow.
I rated him that highly, but he was an Egyptian lad who'd went to the States to study. And he'd done all his studies for his courses over there, so he had great English, which was thankful for me, because obviously... Some of the things, I mean, one of my first games were playing in a Champions League game, and I came in at half-time to address the lads, and the dressing room was empty. And I'm thinking, where's everybody? I've just seen them come in. And I went next door, they were all in the prayer room, which is huge for them. They've got to pray
Massive,
6 times a day.
Mm.
And at this stage, Ramadan,
Yeah.
we went on a training camp before a couple of the Champions League games, but we had to train at midnight, 1 a.m, because the players were obviously sleeping through the day. And then when it came to darkness, they could eat and get the fluids. And that was a great experience trying to balance that. And I tried to work in the same way as them, so I like just ate and done the same. So that was all them type of things I thought were great. And it just opens your eyes, because sometimes you think some of these clubs over on that continent, the support they get's just crazy. The only thing I would say is what I tried to say to them, some of the officials, was they need to like get it organised better, so people around the rest of the world will be more interested in African football, and there'll be a chance that they can deal with World Cups and stuff like that, you know. But a fantastic experience. I mean, absolutely mad. I mean, the first time in Sudan, we were trained at the stadium a couple of times, and the fans would find out, they'd let them in. You'd have 10, 12,000.
Just watching you train.
Oh, yeah. It's just mad.
The love of football is just...
It is.
Extended.
Worldwide, isn't it? So, yeah.
And then there's some good players playing in that African Champions League. They just maybe needed an opportunity, you know, and it's big. But as I say, some of them, they don't want to leave, because if you're playing for Al Ahly in Cairo and you're getting 85, 90,000 every week, and it's just absolute crazy. And the facilities they had, I mean, they're that big. They have 2 stadiums. They have the one in the national stadium in Cairo where the national team play, but they have another one which holds about 40,000. And then they have these training facilities, but then they have these like hubs where the fans can go and watch like away games, but they're like, it's like restaurants and it's like memorabilia shops. It's like a little village. It's like an unbelievable amount of money that can be in it. So
amazing experience, amazing. And you're back in England. What's kind of the next step? What are you hoping? Back in a job in England?
It's gone full circle, my life. I'm back on the terraces now watching Newcastle.
What do you mean on the terraces? They don't give you a ticket?
You get it, or I go with my mates, or...
Oh, right, okay.
And
you don't go down the big market still, do you?
I go with I go in the Strawberry for a pint before and after the game. I'm there a couple hours beforehand. I'm the same.
It's the big market, and then it's the walk to the stadium.
Yeah,
that's how they do it. And I went to Fulham away in the cup the other week, and I was in one of the bars just before Putney Bridge. There, that was.
Did you get recognised? You must have got recognised.
Oh yeah, but this bar was a Newcastle United bar as well, so we got put in there, and it was. I love it, honestly.
So you're loving being a fan again?
Oh, absolutely! It's amazing, and man, it's just like I was at Blackburn in the last round of the cup as well, in with the fans. So what I'm doing is I'm just splitting my time with that and then going to support Bobby. So it's been an amazing few months. I don't want to.
Are you finished with management though, or you will take one if something come along?
I think I am.
You think you are?
To be fair, I think I am. I think I'm enjoying this. It's changing a lot as well.
Oh,
it's becoming
massively, yeah.
And I know, you know, if I get a job, it's not going to be in the top level, and it's even hard down at that level for the lads. They're not getting a lot of time now. Clubs who are down usually didn't have the finances to hire and fire managers, so you did get a bit of time. But even now, some managers last 10 games, 15 games, and it's a tough. And the way the transfer windows work as well, because it used to be different, and it used to be a transfer window, and it used to end on the last Thursday of March or something, and you could bring players in. But now with these summer and winter ones, you're basically working with another guy's players, and you have to try and get results.
Please excuse me, I just want to stop this episode quickly because Big Sam and I just want to say a huge thank you to you for supporting No Tippy Tappy Football, whether you are listening or watching or doing both. Sam and I absolutely love doing this podcast, and we couldn't do it without you. So take a second, please, and subscribe or follow wherever you are watching or listening to us. We're also on Twitter, No Tippy Tappy Football, and we have our own YouTube channel. I know everybody says it, but it really would mean a lot to us, and it means that we can keep getting bigger and better guests the more followers and the more subscribers we have. And then you can go and tell all your mates that you've done Big Sam a favour. So thank you for listening. Is it true? We've heard a lot since the cup final that the rules that Liverpool have around the academy, the ones that I heard were no cars over a certain engine,
Yes.
no flashy watches, a absolute ceiling on salary.
Hand your phone in first thing in the morning.
Really?
Yeah, when you walk through the academy door, you've got to give it to the lady on reception,
Love
and
that.
you get it back at the end of the day. So you're not when you're in the dressing room with your teammates, you're not straight on your phone. You're having interaction with each other. There's a little bit of old school in that coaching, but with modern data, which, you're going to a football club that has unbelievable expectations and demands. If you're ever going to be good enough to play for that team, you have to be prepared that you're going into somewhere there, they expect to win. They expect to win trophies. There's always reminders. You've got the Champions Wall in the training ground and the academy, so it's got all the
This
trophies.
is old school stuff, though, Natalie.
I like
It is.
it. I bet
It's
you
old
like
school
it.
stuff, by the way, which everybody says is no good anymore, and all the young guns go on about this is this or that's that, or you can't do this and you can't do
But
that.
we know because we're inside the game,
Yeah,
and we know
yeah.
even the top guys who we think are elite, they do mix the both. They're still taking stuff from
course they
the
are.
old school days, and
It
which
instills
works.
discipline,
Which
which
works,
is
by the
which is
way.
a massive lack of discipline, by the way,
And
in
it
our
worked.
country now, isn't there? But I mean, anyway, that's another subject.
But
We're
this-
certainly glad to hear it that Liverpool have got levels of understanding about what the rules and regulations are.
And how they do it at the training ground's brilliant. So the academy training ground, you go in there and you've got the AXA, which is the first team, but they build it up. So you've got your under 16 pitch, then your under 18 pitch, then your under
Going
21
closer to
pitch.
the
You
first
get
team
closer,
pitch.
yeah.
Yeah, great.
And what they do as well, which has been brilliant, it's really worked, as you've seen the young lads have come through. They've got what they call a talent group. So that can be any age. You could have a 15-year-old in there, you could have a 17-year-old, a 19-year-old. And what they do, because obviously, as Sam will tell you as well, when you're in a big football club, it's very difficult for you to get round and watch all the teams. So you're listening to coaches, who's the next one. But this talent group, they used to take them up to the AXA, and Jurgen could watch from his office, and he has what they believe are the best 15 players in the academy, and that's how we got to know them. So him and Pep and Vitor, they'd talk and say, I liked him, and then they'd bring him in to train months before.
Yeah.
So Bobby and these young boys that got in the Carabao, they'd been around the first team group for a year. They'd been training with them on and off and see how it works and, understanding. The under 18s and under 21s play the same principles as what Jurgen wants. Not always the same system, but the principles of the high press, where they've got to do certain things. It's all through the group. So when they do eventually, if they're good enough, get to that level, it's not a massive thing for them, the tactical side, because playing for Liverpool is huge in any way. So you don't want these boys to have that and worrying about whether they can understand what the manager wants.
I wonder how many clubs do that now. Because it's always been a big thing about mine. About asking your coaches down below who are the best players. How can we move? Get them up training with the first team, doing what they should do. Because it brings me back to Wes Brown when he sat there, and he goes, most of the games, Sam, were easy compared to training. So because the players I played against in training were far harder than the players I played against on a Saturday, and that's what it was. That's what it's all about. The challenge of going up and stepping up to the first team, which in whatever division you're in, is a step up for that youngster to see whether he can cope or not.
It's funny you should say that, because I was at a dinner with some of my ex-teammates, and Darren Peacock, who was the old centre-half in our team at Newcastle.
Big long hair, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Ponytail,
Aye,
I remember him.
old school, right, rugged heading. He said exactly the same. He was training our front two at the time, where Peter Beardsley and Andy Cole were the perfect combination.
Yeah.
So he said training against them every day. He went into games confident he was going to be on top of the strikers he was playing against, because he was up against this every day in training. And he was an old rugged type centre-half. So, even went as far to say when we ended up with Ferdinand and Shearer as our front two, that could have he probably would have enjoyed that more than playing against Beardsley and Cole, because they were a different type of partnership, you know. So it's all this stuff. I understand where Wes is coming from, because when you're up against elite players day in, day out, it just, especially what he had at Man United, the players that were coming through there in the 90s, stuff like that. So, I mean, you mentioned Duncan before. I've got a little bit of a link with Duncan, because when I left the Northeast to go to Fulham, I just purchased a new house in the Gosforth area, so deciding what to do. And Big Dunk had just come to Newcastle, so he rented me house office for 2 years.
You were Big Dunk's landlord?
I was.
He didn't put a pigeon
Well,
off to the back.
I'm just going to tell you, unbelievable that. You should be telling us me lottery tickets at the weekend, Gaffer. So my dad, in the north, right, in the north of England, in Scotland, pigeon racing is huge, right? My dad was massive on it.
Did you ever watch Geordie Racer as a kid? That was about, it was a kid that had pigeons.
Was it?
I watched when I was a kid.
Right, well, my dad, when I was little, about 9, 10, he tried to build a pigeon cree in our back garden, and I had no interest. But I had to go there, stand with the corn, trying to get these pigeons back in, shaking the corn. I had no interest. But my dad was successful. France, he won flights to France, back to Newcastle and stuff like that. So he was well into it. And I get a call off Duncan one day, and he said, "Wee man, how are you?" And I was like, "All right, big fella, how are you doing?" He said, "Can I put a pigeon cree in the garden?" I said, Duncan, mate, I've just bought the house. It's beautiful. You've seen it's brand new. It's in great nick. I can't have pigeon dirt all over the garden, man.
You didn't say dirt, did you?
No, I didn't. And he went, "No, I'll clean it up. I'll have state of the art. It'll be the best one, you know." And
Be heated, knowing Dunk.
oh yeah,
Central
he did.
heating in it with Dunk.
And then a couple of days later, my dad calls us. "You all right, son?" "Hi, Dad. How you doing?" "Listen, you should let the big man put the cree in the garden." I was like, "What do you mean?" He said, "I've spoke to him, like, because obviously he found out and I was like, I didn't end up doing it. But the split personality with Duncan, so I was his landlord and we used to speak quite a bit. And later on, I'm captain of Fulham and he's captain of Everton, and we're playing at Craven Cottage and the tunnel's tight. So we stand together as a mascot. So I leans across, "All right, big man." Tried to give him a friendly handshake. He didn't even look at us. And I thought, oh, God. So,
that's for not letting me have the pigeons.
Yeah. That come through my mind, by the way. So we played the game. Then afterwards, he was like, "Oh, wee man, you know, the friendships were focused. And that's why I did. Don't be offended." I says, "Oh, don't worry, big fella, I'm not." But yeah, the pigeon one was brilliant.
I love that. I'm desperate to get Big Dunk back on now. We had him on like one of our very first episodes like nearly 2 years ago. So
Hey, we're up in Scotland now. It might be a bit more difficult.
Yeah.
You know, so.
You might can get him back down. He's in the Highlands. If it snows there, they shut the gates.
So let's go back to Bobby. Sorry.
That's fine.
Bobby's dad. But also, I wanted from your perspective, what was it like for you? The lead up to the cup final, when did he start speaking to you, saying, "I think there might be a chance I'm in the team, I might be in the squad, I might be travelling to Wembley"?
Well,
and from your perspective, what was that like?
Yeah, the few weeks leading up to the cup final, I started seeing a sense that Jurgen was giving him more opportunities, believed he was ready more. I was speaking to Gaffer about it earlier. He actually got his debut as a 17-year-old, but he wasn't, physically and mentally, he wasn't there. But now, a couple of weeks beforehand, so for example, the second leg at the Craven Cottage, they needed to get a result, and he threw him on just after half time for Ryan Gravenbach, and they needed to get a result. And you're thinking, wow, that's telling you that he trusts him. One, is brave, and two, he trusts him. He done the same with him and Conor Bradley at the Emirates in the FA Cup, 0-0, 50th minute, threw the two of them on, they ended up winning 2-0. You're thinking, wow, the manager's showing a lot of belief and trust, and the boys started delivering this. So I thought, well, there's an opportunity here, because actually after the second leg, I booked the hotel when they got through. I booked the hotel next to Wembley, the Hilton, thinking the team would stay there, and if they won, we could celebrate. But I actually made the wrong error, because Chelsea stayed there.
Where did Liverpool stay then?
They stayed at the Nova Hotel.
Oh, right.
So, because I think Chelsea must have beat them to it.
Right.
Because a lot of the teams like to stay at the Hilton.
City stay there.
Well, I was there the year before when I went to watch Newcastle play Man United in the Carabao Cup final. So I was there the year before. So, and then obviously the build-up, to it. There was a league game before and he was involved in that. And then you just get the feeling, especially with the injuries they had, that he's going to be involved somewhere along the line. And then he announced, when Jurgen announced the team on the Saturday.
The sad thing is he's leaving.
Well, I was just going to touch on that because...
the sad thing is he's leaving, and the new coach going to be younger,
yeah,
maybe not as experienced. Is his
new ideas?
But has he got the same nerve as Jurgen to play these lads? Like you mean? I suppose when he sees them, watches them train, and goes, fine, like you mean. But there could be a spell where it's not quite as it is at the moment, where these youngsters continue to get this experience and opportunity to thrive in the Liverpool's first team, and of course, by the faces, the back end of the manager and the delivery of the youngsters gives Jurgen even more confidence to keep playing them, which is looking a bit like the class of '92, isn't it?
Mm.
Because there's so many.
Yeah, they've come through together.
You know what I mean?
What was a great example for Bobby and the young players was talking about the ups and downs of football. So on that Wednesday evening, the sky high, they've helped the team get to the Carabao Cup final. But the next morning, Jurgen called the team meeting and announced he was leaving, because Bobby texted me and said, Dad, I need to speak to you really early. He spoke to me. He says, I need to speak. And I thought something had happened to him personally. And when I called him, I was like, what's happening? He's like, Dad, it's not going out in the media till this afternoon, but Jurgen's leaving. And it was like, I was like, gutted. Imagine what the players were like. I was gutted. I was like, what? And then you're thinking, oh, well, they must be going to just give it to Pep Linders, because Pep wants to become a manager in his own right. There could be continuity. And then Pep announces and the rest of the staff are going as well. So it was like...
They're all going?
Yeah, they're all going. In terms of the footballing coach and staff. So okay. Pep Linders, Vitor, Peter, who does the set plays. So you had that up, and then the manager announcing. But I think it was also what it seems to have done is galvanised the group even more to think.
Oh, like, let's go out on a high first.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
For the manager.
I agree with that. Yeah.
Everybody
seems to have lifted the game another.
Absolutely.
Another 2 or 3%.
Let's make it. I know that everyone calls the last dance now after the basketball thing with Jordan and the Bulls, but that's what they seem to have done and thought, let's make this a memorable season for the boss when he leaves and stuff like that. So
I mean, it's on the game.
He can still change his mind,
Absolutely.
And you've said that before, and somebody else has said it on here as well.
Sir Alex changed his mind when he was doing it. I mean, Sir Alex was a lot old at the time, but more the family convinced him he should stay on.
Well, what's happened in the last 24 hours?
He changed his mind and stayed, you know what I mean?
What's happened in the last 24 hours, Michael Edwards, who was a massive part when Jurgen, and he played a huge part in Alisson, Virgil, Van Dijk, alongside Jurgen and Mo Salah coming to the club, and Jurgen had a great relationship with him apparently and speaks very highly of him. He's come back to the club, hasn't he, working for FSG as a CEO of football operations, but not just for Liverpool, for the full company. So if you look at that and you're thinking there was a way of trying to persuade Jurgen to change his mind. I mean, I don't know if you've seen his after-match stuff after the Sparta first leg last week, and there was a Czech journalist said to him, did any of the Sparta players impress you? And he just said to him, he says, I'm retiring this summer. Do you want me to take him on holiday with us?
Good answer.
So it was, no, it's, if there was any,
but yeah.
I mean, he looks like a man who will stick with it, but everyone thought that about Fergie, didn't they? And then he changed his mind and he built another team that becomes successful.
Instead of retiring and come back 3 times. Not as important as Jurgen, but also Alex.
You are to me. You are to me, Sam.
Thank you.
Now, we always ask our listeners if they'd like to ask our guests a question. And you can always do that. If you're watching on YouTube, you can write it in the comments or you can tweet us. We've got a Twitter. I have a Twitter with a question for our guests. So Andy Ford would like to ask you, Lee, would it be your ultimate wish to be able to see Bobby play for Newcastle one day?
Absolutely.
The dream.
I don't know how many fathers and sons have done it for the club.
It's a good question.
But yeah, certainly. I was lucky enough to do it 265 times, and who knows, he might have to do an Alan Shearer and come back. But that would be my ultimate dream, definitely.
Oh, that would just be amazing.
Just a long and good career for me, and keep free from
definitely.
injuries at the start he's making, like you mean, and with all the help you can get today, I hope that's the case.
My dad had
flourishes from there.
My dad had it like that because he obviously didn't play, but he was a huge Newcastle fan. But when I moved to Fulham, he was in the Newcastle end. We played Newcastle at home, Craven Cottage. Actually, it wasn't. It was at Loftus Road because Craven Cottage was getting developed, so we had a ground share with QPR for a year. And Chris Coleman was manager. Ian Long took over. We played Newcastle, who were flying under Sir Bobby for Champions League. And I scored the winner. And my dad was in the...
Oh, no.
My dad was in the Newcastle end.
Did he celebrate? Did he not?
When I went to clap the Newcastle fans, and most of them were giving us a bit of stick for scoring, my dad was one of them.
Would it be the same if you were in the Newcastle end and Bobby was playing and scored a winner?
Do you know what? I was in Dubai over the Christmas and New Year, and they played on New Year's Day in the Newcastle down at Anfield, and Bobby was involved in the squad. It was horrible. Honestly, it was. I watched the game, but it was like midnight in Dubai.
Yeah.
And it was just awful. I wanted it to... Liverpool ended up winning, but I was just like, get this game over. I'm not enjoying this one at all, like, because you're all over the shop, your emotions, So you're just like, so if he's ever in that position where he's starting, it was like, I might just jump on an aeroplane and disappear over the other side of the world or something. I'm not sure I can handle that one.
How are you enjoying being a Newcastle fan this season in general? Because obviously the pressure is really ramping on Eddie Howe. This last season, you were so successful. Newcastle did so well last season that any drop off this year was going to be noticeable. So how have you found it this season?
You know what? If the seasons had been flipped over and this season was last season, and then we kicked on and got the Champions League, you would say that's brilliant progress. Because if we had finished in the top 10 after just avoiding relegation the season before, you'd say, right, we'd take that. And I would have took that as a fan.
They overachieved.
Absolutely.
Massively overachieved. And, and I think that...
it went from relegation.
Yeah.
I couldn't, until the January window, which he made unbelievable recruitment, that all those players made an impact. We were in real trouble. We were in real trouble.
I'd have said to the owners, and they probably wouldn't have liked this, but I mean, and probably Eddie didn't. I'd said to the owners what we needed. So that'd be 6 to 10 players. And they go, what? So you're going Champions League for the first time for God knows how many years.
Oh, since Sir Bobby, 20 years.
You look at Champions League squads, and you're in there for the first time with not that many players who've played Champions League. You're committing so much energy, nervous energy, mental energy, physical energy, that when they come around to play on a Wednesday night and then coming back to play at home on a Saturday or Sunday, it's not that easy to go and reach that level. That's why Pep rarely he goes, he's got 22 players, 25 probably. He's got 25 players who are equally as good as each other. So but Newcastle haven't.
No.
I'm not being unkind to them.
No, they haven't. They haven't.
So they've replaced him with that one, and he's not going to be as good as that one that Man City's are. And that's why they cope with the Champions League. And because look how long it's taken them to win it. They've had more money than anybody else, but look at how long it took and then finally, obviously, a treble, which is like unbelievable.
Yeah.
To match Sir Alex. But to do what they did in year 2 of a takeoff, well, it's 18 months, wasn't it?
Yeah. For me, the manager has to stay. He has to give another opportunity in the summer window, which will be different.
Rumours of Jose in the papers now. Because he was out watching the boxing one in Saudi, like you mean. And,
he was in the box and then the F1, and he bumped into the chairman, didn't he?
Do you think he bumped into the chairman?
Well, who knows? Who knows?
What do you think, Sam?
Who knows with Jose? If he wants it and they want to give it him, he'll be there next season.
The thing with that one is as well, I don't know if you know the background with Jose. He has a little special place for Newcastle, doesn't he? Because of Sir Bobby Robson, because he was Sir Bobby's right-hand man. in what he talks about. He hasn't been that successful, with any of his clubs going but to St James's. His record isn't great in terms of wins. That's with any of them. Chelsea, Man United, Spurs. But when the bus pulls out of St James's, he always gets it to stop where the Bobby Robson statue is, and he gets off the bus. And
does he?
Yeah, I've read that a few times, and I've heard him speak about that.
That's the first time.
So there is that little. He calls himself the little magpie, doesn't he? He's been quoted as saying that. So whether that you could be right that there could have been a little bit of work gone on in the background for him to bump into the owner.
You've got that Geordie Hope while you're talking about.
No, listen, I'm an Eddie Howe fan. I'm right behind Eddie. One, because obviously I've had managerial background and know how hard it is. I think he's done brilliant and overachieved. When we're on our game, we look good. We've got an identity. But it's just slipped away a little bit. If we can keep us in the top 10 this season and maybe sneak in the Europa Conference League, that would be amazing. But there has to be a lot of change in terms of the size of the squad and the quality of the squad as well.
What about Kevin De Bruyne at the weekend then? Obviously, he got taken off, part of that City squad that does rotate. I mean, generally not him. It was injuries that's kept him out. What did you make to his reaction?
I can see why Pep does it, but Kevin can't. Kevin's getting older. Yeah, sadly, we all do. And we all stop playing football because physically we can't do it as much as we used to. And in Pep's experience and in his opinion, he and the injury that Kevin's had, he's trying to save him. Yeah, Kevin, the player that he is and the mentality that he has, don't like it. So it's what you got to deal with. And of course, I had a little bit of that when I was with Everton. I got one of the best players, one of the best forwards ever in England, Wayne Rooney.
Yeah.
And Wayne isn't quite the player he used to be physically, mentally, tactically, skill-wise. Unbelievable. But last 15, 20 minutes, legs, not quite there. Got to take him off. And I was like, what's it going to be like? Sure, you know what I mean? He's Everton through and through. He's a youngster, loves Everton Football Club, played for Man United, England, leading goal scorer, all that. And I'm there going, I'm going to have to take him off. He's probably going to be in my office on Monday, or he's going to throw his shirt off and go down the tunnel or wherever it is. So I had to try and explain how I felt, what I see.
Yeah,
and then I can back that up a bit by his stats.
His stats and data,
he's come off. So it's not going to help that much, but it's here I am.
And what did he do?
To you why he wasn't too bad. There were times where I thought, I'm in trouble here. You mean?
I don't like...
Why? You know what I mean? Because you got the fans going, why is the LZ bringing him off? It's Wayne Rooney. Like, I mean, why? Did I want to bring him off? Did I, heck? Did I want to do it for the benefit of the team? Yes, I did. And that's your big decision. So maybe that's where Pep is. But I see him, Kevin could express his disappointment privately. He's clearly expressing his disappointment publicly because Pep's sitting with him and trying to calm him down, like I mean. And I find that a little, with the relationship there, I find that a little bit, just Kevin,
Yeah.
They seem to have a close relationship.
Very close.
Very close.
I mean, listen, he's got still a huge amount, and I sincerely hope he stays clear of injury for the rest of the season. But it has been a long one, Natalie, hasn't it?
Yeah. He was out for a good 6 months.
You know what I mean? So
he's one of the best that's been in the Premier League, isn't he? If not the best.
Ever.
He's a phenomenal football player.
Isn't it?
Oh, listen,
you know what I mean?
Sam, I'm not I don't like to comment on these situations. I don't like to criticise because I don't want to be a hypocrite because I've done it before myself as a player.
Yeah.
Early 90s, when there's not so many live games
the toys out the pram.
Not so many live games on. It was Super Sunday. We were playing Southampton at the Old Dell.
Yeah.
And my number popped out the toaster. Kevin subbed us. And Peter Beardsley knew. He tried to say calm down as I was walking off. And remember the old silver buckets the video I had with the sponge?
Kicked it.
I volleyed it. Nearly broke my toe. And remember the tunnel was in the corner of the pitch at the Dell. I started storming off, and Kevin ran after us. And, you know, when you were little, like in our day and age, if you'd done wrong, your mum or certainly your dad, he'd tap your backside, wouldn't he? And Kevin started giving us a whack on the backside and dragging us back into the dugout. So even though it's wrong, I don't want to be a hypocrite and criticise Kevin De Bruyne because I've done it.
Well, we've all had our differences over the years.
So I'm thinking...
Well, I'm just saying, when you look back on it, because when it happened to you, you don't like it, but it happens more now than because of the bigger squads. As you said, you understand we don't play as much. But when you have to do it to the big and one of the best players Man City's ever had.
Talking about somebody that is very young, you mentioned before about the surprise England call-up. So the England squad will be announced this week. It might already be out by the time you listen to this.
Okay.
Cole Palmer is being linked to get into that England squad. Sam, would you have called him up now?
Oh, absolutely. I think that we were talking before we came on today, and I think and he's always got time.
Yeah.
Such a that in itself, I can't play him a bigger compliment for being so young, but never panicked, never rushed. Reads the situation clearly before anybody gets near him, what he's going to do. And that's why he looks so calm, looks so composed, drifts past players, scores a goal, assists.
Yeah. Just
needs to keep his feet on the ground. All this press not get carried away, because we see it so many times when they're so young. And good luck to him.
Love that. Okay, we've got a couple of questions left for you before we wrap up. Birmingham, one of your former clubs, struggling a bit this season. I mean, that's been an interesting up and down season at Birmingham. They survived on the final day under you. Is that one of your proudest moments of your football career?
Well, I would say a lot of people looking on the outside and saying Birmingham City, big club, you know, you survive on the last day. But the circumstances of my time there changed dramatically. So I'll give you an example. So I accepted the job on July the 1st, and 10 days later, our owner, Carson Young, got put under house arrest, and all his assets got frozen. So me, in the talks with the club at the time, saying, oh, you've got a great squad, can we add to it? What's the budget and what's the transfer kitty? Which were good. It was a very competitive budget and a great transfer kitty that I could improve the squad that had done so well the season before. Changed. So it was now, oh, Lee, you've got 3 windows to reduce.
Newcastle.
You've got to reduce the wage bill.
So you thought you were buying, you were selling.
Yeah,
that's even more difficult.
And then what I had then was the assets I had Jack Butland and Nathan Redmond, outstanding young players. And I had Nikola Zigic, who was in the Championship on 75 grand a week.
Oh my God.
Was he 6 foot 6?
6 foot 6, Ziggy. And lovely guy. Yeah. Not his fault, the club had given him that. But we were in desperate financial trouble. And so I had a decision to make. Butland was, at that time, Butland won his England cap before he played in the Championship. He was on loan at Cheltenham. Cheltenham in League Two. And when he got it in, that was his only professional football. Played in the Olympics and then got his England cap. Then I gave him his debut in the Championship. And the same with Nathan Redmond, exciting young winger. But what happens in football, there's no secrets. And they got out that way, were struggling and were desperate. So the big
vultures.
Yeah, the vultures come. And you have to sell them for less than that, what they're worth. So Butland went for 3.5 million to Stoke. Redmond went for 3.5 million to Norwich. Chris Hughton, the previous manager, he took them to Norwich. And they were worth a lot more than that. But we are in no position to negotiate. But Ziggy, every window, we're trying to get him up the books. And obviously at the time, there was only China, the Middle East or Russia, these countries that could afford his salary and his contract. So he came in to see us one day, and it was funny. Even when he sat down, I had to stand up, so I was speaking on the same level as him. I was that tall. And he says, Gaffer, listen, he says, getting all these agents, because you imagine the agents, can we have the mandate? Can we have the mandate and all that? So he said, he says, I'm not going to Russia. I ain't going to the Middle East. I ain't going to China. If I move, and it's a big if, I'll only go back to Spain. So I explained this to the English board that we had, advisory board, because Peter Pano, the chairman, and Carson were back in Hong Kong then. And so we got a deal with Malaga at the time. Malaga was still in La Liga, but they were also in Europe. They'd been bought by some sheikh who ended up not having the funds he had. But they were in the Champions League.
Right.
Ziggy had 1 year left on this mega contract. Malaga were going to offer him reduced terms, but over 2 years, which meant he earned more money than he would, and he's finally out with us. Also moving to southern Spain, and his club was in the Champions League, so I thought, he'll go for this. Gets him in. Ziggy, got you that move back to Spain. Malaga, you can go and live in Marbella if you want, 2-year deal, you're coming into your mid-30s. I think I'll stay.
Oh!
So that day, obviously, the expectation of the club was still so high in the fans, and rightly so. It's a big club, great facilities, training ground, brilliant. But we started to, my first summer there, in that last season, when we stayed up, I could only get loan players, so I had likes of Jesse Lingard, who scored 4 on his debut for me. We beat Sheffield Wednesday 4-0. He scored all 4. Phenomenal. Kyle Bartley. Do you have him at West Brom, Gaffer? The big centre-back?
Yeah.
Big
I had him at Bolton Wanderers as a kid, and he got sold to Arsenal.
Aye, that's right.
Yeah.
Big Dan Burn.
Yeah.
I signed on loan from Fulham.
Yeah.
So I had these lads, and, we ended up doing well. We were just pushing around the playoffs. January the 1st come, and there was a week in January where the parent club could recall the players, and all the players that had signed on loan had to get recalled. So I had to start again. Well, the next bunch of loans didn't work out, not the same.
No.
They didn't have the same. So
Why
we started.
did they recall them, all the clubs then?
They said they had offers to sell them, or they wanted the manager had been impressed and wanted to put them in the first team squad.
A bit of a sickness, that one.
So we started tumbling down the league, and then the last day, it Bolton. Wow. I mean, we needed to bet at Doncaster's result. And it's funny, Nigel Pearson was manager of Leicester. They were playing Doncaster. And we were obviously at Bolton. And Nigel had worked with Paul Dickoff, who was Doncaster manager, and he'd worked with me. And he'd rang the both up separately and said, listen, all I can see is I'm sending my team out to go and win the game, do whatever's necessary. You have to look at yourself. I both like yous, but, I didn't want you either to be in this predicament. So that was fine. I knew what Nigel was about, very good integrity in that. So we found out, we were playing well, went 1 down, still playing well, went 2 down. Then we heard, Doncaster were drawing. And we scored 2-1, and I just had this ridiculous feeling we weren't going to lose. And we were going to get back in the game, sorry. And then I hear one of my staff say, Doncaster are losing. And then the crowd went. And my smallest player, Paul Caddis, heads one in the 96th minute. Headed it in. They wouldn't believe. I set off down the line. I mean, I had no pace when I played. I found pace. My agent said to us, if you had that pace when you played, I would have got you to Real Madrid. So, and I set off and I just went into the crowd, and it was the biggest relief I've ever had. Everyone says to us, I bet you had some party that night. But you know what? I got home, back to Birmingham, went out with my family to go for a meal. Halfway through, I had to say, can we go home? I was physically and mentally shattered. And I just had to go straight.
Yeah. Absolutely.
What's it like?
Oh, gosh.
Honestly, it's like, it was just draining. I remember when the team was out, in away games, it's horrible. The team goes out to warm up. You haven't got an office. At home, in the home stadium, you've got your office. You can go in, watch the telly, bring some friends in, have a chat while the team's out warming up. So I'm sitting in the away dressing room at Bolton, and I just sent me family a text, thank you for your support, we're going to give it the one last chance, blah, blah, blah. You've been there for us through tough times. And then that was it. And then after the game, as I said...
Shattered.
But Ziggy bought the beers for the bus journey back to Birmingham from the
boat on
that salary. And you know what? He bought the cheapest ones as well. So I had a right pop at him for that.
I didn't think you'd have a champagne out, Ziggy.
Exactly.
Come on. Thank you. It's been absolutely wonderful. I've loved it so much. So many wonderful stories. But I've got one last question for you, though. Who's the better player? You or Bobby?
Oh, you.
No doubt.
You little devil.
No doubt, Bobby. No doubt.
You have to say that now.
No,
don't you?
listen,
It's a close one then. I remember of him.
He's got all I ever give him advice to do. I never advise him. I let his coaches do that. If I speak to him before the game via a text or voice, all I say to him, this is the only advice I give him, because this was a huge asset of mine. Make sure they're the hardest working player on the pitch. And if you do that, whatever else you've got, your ability, like I said, I didn't have a change of pace. He's got a change of pace. He takes after his granddad from his mother's side, and he's a decent height as well. So he's got the assets. But every time he step on that pitch, whether it's if he drops back to the under-21s or the first team, be the hardest worker, and that's it. But he's got the potential. He can be better than me, Will. But my career wasn't bad. But he's already beat us after 12 games, is it? And he's got that trophy that I strive for nearly 20 years.
Has he said anything? Has he mentioned
I've
that?
been down to see him, and he let us have a picture taken with it round my neck.
Yeah, Dad.
Yeah, Dan. This is what you could have won.
Yeah, Dad.
I love that.
So, he's a little devil. I'm hoping he's got a few more come the end of the season. You won't.
No,
especially that Premier League
none.
one.
I'm hoping. Hope he
the
has
FA
none.
Cup as
Sorry.
well,
Yes.
yeah. Well, to be honest with you, you know where I'm going on Saturday evening, don't you?
You
in
hope,
terms of,
yes.
I need the black and whites to do something they've never done for a long time, and that's go to the Etihad and win.
Yes. Well.
Are we allowed to put 2 goalkeepers in? Is that a law? Is it?
Well, Edison's injured, but Stefan Ortega for us is incredible, by the way.
He's a good goalie.
He's a really good goalkeeper.
Game, it ended up being the number 2 choices in the game last week, and they've both done terrific.
They both did amazing. Well, I hope you're very sad on Saturday and your son's very sad at the end of the season. Sorry.
Oh,
that was horrid, wasn't it?
And it was. What a way to end the show.
Horrid way
I'm
to
going to
finish
you
it.
to it. Going to separate you, am I?
Thank you, though. It's been a
Thank
real
you,
pleasure. Really
Thanks.
love
Cheers,
the
mate.
stories.
Thank
And
you, Ali.
yeah, no,
Thank you.
seriously.
Thank you.
Best of luck to you, son.
Thank
Absolute
you.
best of luck to him.
Cheers.
Thank you,
Great.
Sam.
Thank you.
Thank you, as always.
Subscribers, I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you very soon.
We will. We'll be back next
Thanks
week.
to Willie Mill, as always.
Thank you for another episode of No Tippy Tappy Football, brought to you by William Hill.